Friday came faster than Becca had expected. She stood in front of her bedroom mirror, Lucy playing with wooden blocks on the bed behind her, trying to decide what one wore to a marriage of convenience. She'd settled on a simple dress, the same one she'd worn before Ryan's accident, when life had felt less complicated. The ceremony itself was brief and businesslike. Judge Harrison, a family friend who'd known Becca since childhood, performed the service in his chambers with his secretary. As witness, Jake had arrived wearing a pressed blue shirt under his denim jacket, his black hat in his hands, looking more serious than she'd ever seen him. "Do you, Rebecca Williams, take Jacob Mitchell?" The words felt surreal, like she was watching someone else's life unfold. When Jake slipped a simple gold band onto her finger, where had he gotten a ring? His hands were steady and warm. "I do," she heard herself say, and meant it in the only way she could. "You may kiss the bride," Judge Harrison said with a gentle smile. Jake looked at her questioningly, and Becca nodded. It was just a formality. After all, his kiss was soft, brief, and respectful. But when he pulled away, something in his eyes made her heart flutter in a way she hadn't felt in 3 years. After the paperwork was signed and the judge had wished them well, Jake walked Becca and Lucy to her truck in the courthouse parking lot. "So," Becca said, shifting Lucy to her hip, "I guess we're married now." "I guess we are." Jake smiled, but there was something nervous in his expression. "Becca, about what I mentioned before, there are some things I need to tell you. Things I should have said a long time ago." "Like what?" Jake took a deep breath, looking out across the town square, where a few elderly residents sat on benches feeding pigeons. "Can we go somewhere private? Maybe your place. This isn't the kind of conversation for a parking lot." An hour later, they sat on Becca's front porch while Lucy napped inside. Jake held an envelope in his hands, turning it over and over like he was trying to find the right words. "3 years ago," he began, slowly, "when I bought the Thompson place. It wasn't because I was looking for a fresh start. I was looking for you." Becca felt her breath catch. "What do you mean?" Jake opened the envelope and pulled out a photograph, old and creased, showing a young soldier in army fatigues, with his arm around another soldier. Even though the second man was younger and leaner, Becca recognized those gentle brown eyes immediately. "That's Ryan," she whispered, touching the photograph. "And you? We served together in Afghanistan, 2 tours. He saved my life more times than I can count, and I tried to do the same for him." Jake's voice was soft, distant. "He talked about you constantly. Showed me pictures, read me parts of your letters. I felt like I knew you before I ever met you." Becca stared at the photograph, her mind racing. "But Ryan never mentioned Jake Mitchell." "That's because my name wasn't Mitchell then. It was Jacob Samuel Hazer Mitchell. I went by Sam in the service." Jake pulled out another document, military papers, with his full name. "After I got discharged, I decided to go by Jake, use my mother's maiden name. Wanted to leave some of the war behind, I suppose." "Sam," Becca breathed, understanding flooding through her. The Sam that Ryan used to write to. He'd mentioned getting letters from Sam, but I never connected it. The day before Ryan's last deployment, he made me promise something. Jake's hands tightened on the envelope. He said if anything ever happened to him, I had to find you. Make sure you and Emma Lucy were okay. He said you were the strongest person he'd ever known, but that you'd never ask for help when you needed it. Tears were streaming down Beck's face now. Lucy's middle name, it's Emma, after Ryan's grandmother. How did you know her original name was going to be Emma? Because Ryan picked it out. He wrote to me about it when you were 6 months pregnant. Said it was perfect because it meant universal, and you two were his whole universe. Becca covered her face with her hands, overwhelmed. So all this time, the fence repairs, showing up after storms, being there when I needed help but never making a big deal of it. I was keeping a promise to my best friend. Jake's voice was barely above a whisper. But Becca, I need you to know, over these 3 years, it became more than just a promise. I fell in love with you. Not with Ryan's memory of you, but with the woman I got to know. The way you sing too, Lucy, when you think no one's listening. How you leave extra vegetables from your garden on Mrs. Patterson's porch because you know she's too proud to accept charity. The way you stop to help baby birds back into their nests. Becca looked up at him through her tears. You've been watching over us all this time. I was trying to honor Ryan's memory and his love for you both. But somewhere along the way, I started hoping that maybe someday you might have room in your heart for someone new. Not to replace Ryan, nobody could do that. But to add something different. Jake. Becca reached for his hand. When you agreed to marry me so quickly, it wasn't just about helping a neighbor, was it? He shook his head. I've been wanting to be your husband for real, for 2 years now. I just never knew how to tell you without it seeming like I was betraying Ryan's memory, or taking advantage of your situation. Becca was quiet for a long moment, looking at their joined hands. The gold ring Jake had placed on her finger caught the afternoon sunlight. Where did you get this ring? She asked softly. Jake's cheeks flushed. I've been carrying it for 8 months. Bought it after last Christmas, when Lucy hugged my legs and called me Uncle Jake for the first time. I thought maybe someday, if the timing was ever right, you've been planning to propose. I've been hoping for the courage to propose. Jake squeezed her hand gently. But when you asked me to marry you for the ranch, I thought maybe this was the universe giving me a chance to show you how much I care, even if you didn't feel the same way. Becca stood up and walked to the porch railing, looking out over the land that had almost been lost. The late afternoon sun was painting everything in shades of gold. The fields, the barn, the fence line that Jake had been quietly maintaining for 3 years. I need to ask you something, Jake, and I need you to be completely honest. Anything. If I hadn't needed to get married to save the ranch, would you have ever told me who you really were? Would you have ever told me about your promise to Ryan? Jake was quiet for so long that Becca turned around to look at him. He was staring at his hands, his hat balanced on his knee. I don't know, he said finally. I've wrestled with that question every day for 3 years. Part of me was terrified that if you knew the truth, you'd feel like I was some kind of obligation Ryan had left behind, that you'd never be able to see me as just Jake, separate from your memories of him. And what about now? Now I'm terrified that you'll think I manipulated this situation, that I helped engineer your need for a husband somehow. Becca came back and sat beside him on the porch step. Did you? No. Jake's voice was firm. I had no idea about the county's position until you told me. If I had known, I would have found another way to help, maybe a loan, or some legal maneuvering. I never would have wanted you to feel forced into marriage. But you're glad it happened this way. Jake turned to look at her directly. Becca, I would have married you in any circumstances, for any reason, if it meant I got to be part of your and Lucy's life. But I'm hoping that now that you know the truth, maybe we can figure out what we want this marriage to actually be. Inside the house, Lucy began to wake up from her nap, her soft babbling drifting through the screen door. The sound made them both smile. She's going to want her afternoon snack, Becca said. I should probably go, Jake said, starting to rise. Or, Becca caught his hand. You could stay for dinner. Lucy loves when you're here. And I think we have a lot more to talk about. Jake's face lit up with hope. You sure, Jake? You've been part of our family for 3 years, even when I didn't realize it. The only question now is what we want the next 3 years to look like. As if on cue, Lucy appeared at the screen door, her blonde curls messy from sleep, holding her stuffed bunny. Jake, she squealed, pressing her face against the screen. Jake laughed and went to open the door, scooping Lucy up in his arms. She immediately started chattering to him in her toddler language, pointing at his hat and trying to grab it. Watching them together, Becca felt something settle in her chest that she hadn't felt since Ryan died, the sense that her family was complete. Jake, she said softly. He looked at her over Lucy's head. Ask me again. Ask you what? What you've been wanting to ask me for 8 months. Jake's eyes widened. He set Lucy down and took Becca's hands in his, right there on the front porch, where Lucy could clap and giggle at the show. Rebecca Williams Mitchell, he said, using her new legal name. Will you marry me? For real, This time, because I love you, and I love Lucy, and I want to spend the rest of my life taking care of you both and letting you take care of me right back. Yes, Becca said, tears streaming down her face again. Yes, yes, yes. Jake kissed her then, a real kiss this time, full of 3 years of unspoken feelings and the promise of all the years to come. Lucy squealed with delight and hugged both their legs. Later that evening, after dinner and Lucy's bedtime story, Becca and Jake sat on the porch swing Ryan had built during their first year of marriage. The stars were coming out, and the evening air carried the scent of summer grass and possibility. "I have something else to tell you," Jake said, his arm around Becca's shoulders. "Another secret. Not a secret, exactly. More like a confession." Jake was quiet for a moment. "That fence I've been fixing, it's not broken. Hasn't been for 2 years. I liked having an excuse to be close to your house in the mornings, to see you and Lucy start your day." Becca laughed, the sound carrying across the quiet ranch. "I wondered about that. It's the sturdiest fence in 3 counties by now. I'll find other excuses now." "You don't need excuses anymore, Jake. You live here now, remember?" Jake pulled her closer, resting his chin on top of her head. "I remember. Sometimes I still can't believe it's real." "It's real," Becca assured him. "All of it. The marriage, the love, the family we're building. It's all real." Above them, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, witnessing another beginning in the long story of the Williams Ranch. Inside the house, Lucy slept peacefully, surrounded by the security of being truly loved. And on the front porch, to people who had found each other through loss and hope and the unbreakable bonds of friendship, began to plan their future together. The silent farmer had turned out to be anything but silent when it came to the things that mattered most. And the young widow had discovered that sometimes the greatest love stories begin not with fireworks and passion, but with quiet devotion and the courage to honor both the past and the promise of tomorrow. Becca Williams, stood on her front porch at dawn, her 2-year-old daughter, Lucy, balanced on her hip, watching the silent figure of Jake Mitchell as he mended the fence along her property line. For the 3rd morning this week, at 28, Becca carried herself with the quiet strength of someone who'd learned too young that life doesn't wait for you to be ready. Her auburn hair caught the early morning light as she shifted Lucy to her other hip, the little girl's blonde curls, a stark contrast to her mother's darker tones. Jake was already deep into his work, his black cowboy hat tilted low, the sleeves of his navy denim shirt rolled up despite the cool morning air. "That fence isn't even on his property," Becca whispered to Lucy, who babbled softly in response. "Why does he keep fixing it?" Jake Mitchell was a mystery that had settled into their small Nebraska community 3 years ago, right around the time Becca had lost her husband Ryan in that terrible farming accident. Jake had quietly purchased the abandoned Thompson place next door and had been their neighbor ever since. A man of few words, perhaps a dozen sentences in all their interactions, he seemed to appear whenever something needed fixing, whenever a storm had passed through, whenever Becca found herself staring at another problem she couldn't solve alone. Today was different, though. Today, the letter from the county courthouse sat crumpled on her kitchen table, giving her 30 days to prove she could manage the ranch independently or face foreclosure. The law was clear. A single woman couldn't maintain the property tax, exemptions, and agricultural classifications that kept the ranch viable. She needed a husband. On paper, at least. Becca took a deep breath and walked across the morning dewgrass toward Jake. Lucy gurgled happily, reaching her tiny hands toward the man who always tipped his hat when he saw them but never lingered to chat. "Morning, Jake," Becca called softly. Not wanting to startle him, Jake looked up from the fence post he was securing, his weathered hands stilling on the wire. At 35, he had the kind of face that told stories without words. Laugh lines around gentle brown eyes, and the permanent tan of someone who'd spent his life working under the open sky. "Morning, Becca." "Lucy." He touched the brim of his hat, his voice carrying that familiar, quiet warmth. Becca shifted nervously, Lucy now trying to grab at the morning breeze. "Jake, I need to ask you something something that might sound crazy. Jake set down his tools and gave her his full attention, something she'd noticed he always did. When Jake Mitchell looked at you, you felt like the only person in the world. I need a husband, Becca said quickly, then felt her cheeks burn. I need to be married. On paper, the county is threatening foreclosure because I can't maintain the agricultural exemptions as a single woman. It's an old law, but it's still enforceable. I need someone to marry me, legally, just so I can keep the ranch for Lucy. Jake was quiet for a long moment, his gaze drifting to Lucy, who was now trying to eat her own tiny fist. What about your family? Friends from town? My parents passed when I was 22. Ryan's family. Becca's voice trailed off. They never thought I was good enough for him, and everyone else in town either can't help or would expect it to be real. I just need someone who understands its business. Someone I can trust. Jake nodded slowly, pulling off his work gloves. When the courthouse closes the application period next Friday, we'd need to be married by then. Becca hugged Lucy closer. Jake, I know this is asking a lot. I know we barely know each other, but you're the only person I can think of who might understand. You're kind, you're steady, and you've never. She paused, searching for words. You've never made me feel like I owe you anything for your help. I'll do it, Jake said simply. Becca blinked. Just like that. Just like that. But Jake, you should know, this would just be on paper. You'd keep your place, I'd keep mine. Nothing would change except the legal documents. We'd probably need to be seen together occasionally, for appearance's sake, but otherwise. Jake picked up his tools, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Becca, I think you might be surprised by how much you don't know about your neighbors. Something in his tone made her pause, but before she could ask what he meant, he was already walking back toward his truck. Friday afternoon work for you? He called over his shoulder. Yes, she called back, still trying to process how quickly he'd agreed. Jake, thank you. He stopped and turned back to her, his expression suddenly serious. Becca, there's something you should know before Friday. Her heart skipped. What? But Jake just shook his head, as if changing his mind. We'll talk after. There are some things that are easier to explain once the papers are signed.